Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's webinar, 5 Key Steps to a Successful Business Case, presented by our Director of Business Solutions at Watermark Learning, Dr. Susan Hydorn. My name is Mariela Salinas, and I'll be assisting and moderating our session today. We are in Zoom for today's webinar, and we will be sharing a copy of this recording with you in an email after the webinar. We do encourage participation throughout the webinar, so please use that chat or the Q&A option for our short Q&A after the presentation. Educate 360 is so excited to present this webinar today. So without further ado, I will hand it over to you, Dr. Susan.
Thank you very much. And happy Wednesday, everyone. So, we're going to talk about business cases. And I'm going to assume you're all here because you want to know a little bit more about it. Business cases are really one of the best tools we can use. And I use it frequently as a consultant. I've written a lot of them for my clients. So we're going to try and at least give you, this is only an hour, but we'll give you a few tips that might help you as you move forward. So we're going to talk about the essential components of effective business case. We're going to talk about kind of a framework in which you can use to develop your business case, which I always have found helpful. And then just some common pitfalls when we create a business case. So those are kind of the things that we're going to cover today. Mariella is going to have a quick poll because I'm curious with all of you there, how many of you have created a business case in the past? So I'm just kind of curious, just say yes or no, and we'll see where the results lie. Ooh, it was pretty high on the yes, and now it's kind of even.
Awesome. I'll give us about another 10 seconds to get those
Yeah, it looks
answers
like we've
in.
got a few. So if you haven't participated, throw in your chat. I'm just really interested in the results.
Some of them
You know, must have
are.
everybody there. We'll give them maybe a few more minutes to,
I'll cut it
maybe
off
they just got
right
in.
here. Oh, and we got a couple yeses in the chat. Awesome. Good to know.
Yeah.
Y'all, this
Oh my
is
gosh,
crazy.
it's like a race, 49 to 50. I mean, so close.
So cool. Alrighty, I will end it right here at the minute mark. And here are the results. Almost 50-50, which is
Wow,
really cool to
that
see.
is interesting. That is really interesting.
Thanks, everyone.
So yes, thank you. It's fascinating. Well, get out of there. For that. So hopefully for those of you who have created business cases, you're going to have at least a few tips to take home with you. For those who haven't, we are going to certainly give you maybe some tips that you can get started. And Joe asked, what is your working definition of business case? We will talk about that shortly because that's what's coming up. There we are. What is a business case? And we're not talking about use cases here. We are talking about business cases. Business case is actually a business document. And it's really, when you get down to it, and they have all kinds of fancy definitions, but it's a decision-making tool for assessing, does this project, this initiative make sense? Will we get a return on investment? And so it's looking at, and we'll talk about what's in a business case, but it's really assessing future value. And oftentimes business cases are the impetus into, if you have it at your organization, portfolio management. Portfolio management just takes all those business cases that we have written and said, wow, we have a lot of projects we can do in this organization. And let me tell you, as a consultant for 30 years, there's lots of projects in organizations, right? But you can't spend money on all of them. You don't have the time, you don't have the resources. So how do you choose? How do you pick? And business cases help the organization decide which ones do we want to spend money on, because we only have so much time, so many resources, so much budget. It's kind of like our own budget. We can buy this or this or this, but we can't do all three, so we have to decide. A business case helps us decide that. And the better you can be at a business case, because it's almost also a sales tool, is why pick this one over this one? If you can create a really good business case, it will likely be accepted. Not always, I'm not guaranteeing 100%, but the better you write your business case and make a business case and have the data, yours will receive a lot more attention. I'm still doing business cases, even though now that I've joined Educate 360. Before I request, oh, I think we should do this new certification. I think we should add this class, or I think we should do this process. Got to have a business case, got to have the data. And so that's really important. So we're going to be walking through some tools and techniques that you can use to really build a powerful business case, a powerful statement. It's almost like a sales tool. Why this one? Well, this one's pretty important, and I think we're going to get value off of this. So the other thing that a business case does, and I'm going to say that most business cases aren't good at this, or the people that create the business cases aren't good at this, is remembering to add your value plan. So it's not like just, oh, here's a business case, because this is a great idea. And I always think, really, my ideas are great, but not everybody does. And they'll go, Susan, so where's the data, right? There should be business value documented. What is business value? How are you going to measure it? And we're going to talk about that as we move forward. So a business case is one, a decision-making tool. Do we want to invest in this project or not? It helps you prioritize your efforts. And two, it's a business value tracking tool in order to say, hey, what was the value we thought or expected from this initiative? And what did we actually get? So it can be really a powerful tool. I personally don't think business cases have been used as much as I would like to see. Some organizations don't even do business cases, and you'd think after all this time, business cases have been out forever, that it would be taken advantage of. And if they do a business case, it's not always well written, and it doesn't include business value. So I'm going to give you those tips that you can write a great business case. So why do we need one? Okay. Well, one of the things we need to do in a business case is align the organizational strategy to the initiative. Because if there's a mismatch, if the organization is going left and this project takes them right, they just wasted a whole lot of money. And one of the things we need to do, whether you're a PM or a BA or anything else, is make sure that we're providing value to the organization. How we do that is making sure everything we do aligns with the strategy, aligns with the direction of the organization. Business cases help you draw that line. One of the things in the business cases say, hey, how does this business case align to the strategy? Have to have an answer so we know that it does. Certainly it helps in collaborative decision making and transparency, because you have people, everything documented, and people can see, okay, what is the business case? How did you get there? What does it cover? We'll talk about what's in scope and out of scope and all the things that are in a business case. Oftentimes, a business case is best if it's created collaboratively with people, so that they can go, yeah, that makes sense. And it also provides transparency. For any of those of you in Agile, transparency is one of those pillars of empiricism, is that everyone is on the same page. Everyone understands what the project is about and what will come out of that. So we're making sure that there's alignment there. Certainly, it provides us with an opportunity to do cost and benefit. What are the costs of this option? And I always think you should include more options, and we'll talk about creating options later, but what is the options? For each option, what are the costs and what are the benefits? Here's what it's going to cost us to implement and or purchase and support. And these are the benefits we're going to think, try and get out of it. And hopefully you have positive value, and positive value means that the benefits outweigh the cost and the risk. A negative value would say, the cost and risk are bigger than the benefits. So I don't think so. We're not going to do this, right? And so just understanding what that whole big picture looks like. The other thing is certainly allocation of resources. Like I said, we only have so many resources. And if we don't have the resources internally, we often have to contract resources. So if it's an important enough project, we might be willing to do that. It's like, okay, if we're going to do this project, we might have to, you know, hire some additional consultants or contractors to help us do the job. But it's going to be worth it because this is the value we're going to get, which means we have to be really specific on what value we are going to get to make sure that it is worth it. The other thing is return on investment. Will we get a return? What is the payback period? Is it 2 years? Is it 40 years? Is 40 years appropriate? Are we going to buy that? I don't know. Things change so fast. Anything for 40 years would be long gone, but it justifies investment. Yes, this makes sense for all the resources and the work we have to do, but the value we're going to get is going to be more. So it justifies the investment. It feeds into your portfolio management to justify that. And then ensuring that it gets business value. What is the value that's going to be coming out? We have to, if you can't make a business case and tell them how much what value they think they're going to gain, little hard to pass that business case. It's like, no, what value are we getting out of it? Why are we doing it? Are we just spinning our wheels, a little gerbil and the little wheel, right? So that's business value. Certainly, it's a document that has a single point of reference. So business case feeds right into those project initiation documents. It's like, why are we doing this? How does it align to strategy? What's in scope and out of scope? All of those things. This is the start of that movement. So it is a source for any project. It's like, why are we doing this project? A lot of times I've been on projects and people go, why are we doing this again? And pretty soon we find ourselves going right when we should be going left. And so it's a single point. Let's remind ourselves, what are we doing this for? Why are we doing it? What's the goals and the focus? It also helps us solve problems. Because usually a business case is either going to take a opportunity, take advantage of that, or to fix a problem. And so we can say, yeah, we've solved that problem. It could be an opportunity or a problem, but we've solved it. This is a way to solve it. And then stakeholder buy-in. If stakeholders had input into the process, that always helps, or that they can at least understand it and there's transparency. There's a lot more stakeholder buy-in. Whenever I do business cases, what I would do is actually start planting seeds. And what do I mean by that? I would test out my business case. So I would go to the people that needed to sign off, or the managers, the people impacted, and I say, hey, I'm thinking about this. Here's some of the parts of the business case I have done. What do you think? Am I missing anything? And sometimes they'll go, oh, Susan, this will never work. So, okay, back to the drawing board. Or I think this is, you have some additional information, or I have additional information to give you that you don't have. So by the time I had to present this business case, I already had acceptance, because I would take time to build those relationships on people that it mattered to and say, hey, do I have the right data? Are we solving the right problem here? What do you think about these options? Will they fit in your culture? Will they make sense on what else you're doing? Because there's always dependencies. There's times where projects depend on other projects, and one has to be done first before the other. It might impact, org change or HR stuff or whatever, right? But I would I would check it out. So I knew by the time I submitted my business case, it was always approved. It was always approved because I already knew what people were thinking. Getting their ideas, their thoughts, poke holes in it now. So when I present, I don't have lots of questions. They'll go, yep, we got it, good to go. So just kind of a tip to have a successful business case. So who creates them? Okay. A lot of us do. Sometimes it's the business people who are closest to the problem. Maybe it's their managers that do it. It's certainly you have to be able to understand either the root cause of it or the drivers of the change. But it could be business analysts, project managers, product owners. If you're doing agile, business relationship managers. I mean, just anybody. It could be anybody um, that is going to create a business case because you're saying, okay, we have a change initiative. I have a new idea to solve this problem or to take advantage of this opportunity because customers are demanding it, our competitors are offering it, we better too. Whatever that looks like, anyone can do a business case. Now, you in your particular organizations may have some boundaries to that. I've seen business cases written by all these people. I also know that sometimes in your organization, there's only certain people who are allowed to do business cases that you just have to kind of find out. And if it is certain people, I would suggest that, you know, help them do it. Help them be able to create that business case. So kind of adding value in helping them because a lot of people find business cases very daunting. It's like, oh, where do I start? And then when they do a business case or when they first do business cases, it's very, let's say, missing a lot of in-depth stuff. So you got each section filled out, but there's not much there, right? So being able to help them really create a strong business case. So here are the table of contents that you would find in a business case. And I'm curious, and you can put it in the chat that there might be some things that you have that are really great in your business case. So I'd be interested in, if there's anything missing as you look at this. But first of all, you usually have an executive summary, right? It's like, okay, overview because executives don't want to read the whole darn thing. We all kind of know that. So then you dig down into the business need. The business need is the problem or the opportunity. And we call it, in this case, when we're going to show you our model here on creating business cases, we call it a situation just because it makes them a better acronym. But, somehow you have to know, okay, tell me what the problem is. How big is that? What's the situation? What's the opportunity we're trying to take advantage of? And then also saying, okay, if this is the problem, it's this opportunity now, what is our objectives? What are our goals and objectives as a department or organization? What is measurable? What's the acceptance criteria look like? How does it match? Again, that strategic alignment. How does it align back to the strategies of the organization? And then we also have some analysis to do. The best business cases based on data. And we're going to talk about each of these coming up in a little bit more in depth. So I'm just going to do high level here. So you got to figure out the root cause, opportunity drivers, get as much data as you can. Then make recommendations. And I'm going to put plural on alternatives. There's a plural there already, but because oftentimes I see business cases where it's like, okay, here's my recommendation. Well, what are the options? There should always be options. And one of the options is do nothing. You don't have to do anything. Probably not the most prudent decision to make, but you can do nothing. So what are the alternatives? Maybe there's 3, 4 alternatives. Is a feasibility analysis, which alternatives A, B, C, and D are feasible? Gap analysis, cost benefit, risk assumptions, constraints, dependencies, all of those. And then we certainly have to have an implementation approach. And this is not a project plan. Some people get a little bit crazy and they love to plan projects. Uh, this is more of an approach, kind of like when you're in Agile, you don't have plans, you have approaches because you don't want this huge document. Doesn't really have to, the business case doesn't have to be that big as long as you cover everything. Um, so project approach and scope, really high level, high level. This isn't your detailed plan. Activities, resources, like how many people do you think you're going to need? What type of resources? Stakeholders, high level. And again, I'm going to go through this in more detail as it comes up. Certainly evaluation measures. We're going to actually talk about more about a value plan that I actually put in my business cases. Success measures, how do we know success? And any, next steps or an appendix, if you have data or something that you certainly need to add, it's a good time to add it. Not everybody will want it, they'll want the high level view, but some people are very detailed and want to know the data behind it. So that's basic um, things in a business case. So here is our framework. We call the framework SORRY. This is a watermark framework. And my boss who created this framework always said, you'll be sorry if you don't use this framework. So just to remember SORRY. So SORRY is an acronym, which is define the situation, analyze the situation, recommend solution options, and actually, I have some new messages before I go out. Oh, what's the difference between assumptions and dependencies? Let me see if I am going to go back here a second because for some reason, my chat wasn't reading and all of a sudden I got a whole bunch. Oh, in one organization, PMs are responsible for the creation, could be. Impact of not doing the project, huge. Yes, absolutely. Our business analysts used to be responsible to create and sometimes business analysts are, or a combination thereof. Difference between assumptions and dependencies. Assumptions are those things we assume to be true, but we're not sure. I always say I'm going to assume that my stakeholders are available for me to interview them to get requirements, but I don't know that till the end of the project. Dependencies are things that we know that might be, this project's dependent on this project has to be done before, or this requirement is dependent on this requirement, or this product is dependent on. So we know these are dependencies. Assumptions are just those things we assume to be true. And it's like, well, we're not sure, but we're going to assume. And we always have to make sure that we validate our assumptions because otherwise, as you know, the old saying, assumptions can make you know what out of you and me. They can get in your way. Let's see. Let's see a few more, and then I'm going to go back to that. Dependencies are two or more things that are interrelated. Yes, that's excellent. Thank you, Michael. So anyway, we're going to go back to, I think I got most of going to the framework. So first of all, you need a business need, the problem or the opportunity. Okay, we got a problem to be fixed or an opportunity to take advantage of. It's one of those. If you have a problem that needs fixing, we need to do root cause analysis. If you're taking opportunities, what are the drivers of those opportunities? So then we go, okay, to solve this problem, we need a request. Now, business cases, you don't create a business case on everything because they do take time. So oftentimes companies have a threshold, and some of them will say, okay, 100,000 or greater, if we think that's the cost, you have to do a business case. If it's less than, we're not going to worry about it. Sometimes it's 50. Sometimes, it just really depends on how large the company is and where their thresholds are. So it's just like, okay, what's your threshold? On these projects, I don't need a business case. Maybe I just need a request. On these, I need a full-blown business case that goes through the process and gets blessed by the portfolio team or whoever approves them. So you got the request. So sorry. So S is define the situation. A for analyze it. Then we recommend options. Then we determine the implementation approach and define evaluation criteria. So this covers, if you'll notice, this covers everything that's in here, defining the situation, analyzing it, creating uh, options, doing an implementation approach, and evaluating measures. So you cover it all in this. And so it's kind of a nice way to remember. It's like, oh yeah, what are those things I need to do? So first it is define the situation. What is it? Is it a problem? Is it an opportunity? This actually creates that rationale needed to make a really good investment decision. Is this problem even worth solving? Is this opportunity worth taking advantage of? Maybe there's only 2% of our customers who want this. Do we need to really give it to them? Do we need to be everything to everyone? Now, if it's going to get huge revenue on those 2% of the customers, maybe we have to think about it. So context matters. It's like, okay, we got 500 calls to the help desk or to customer service about this product or this process or whatever it is, this service. And, you go, okay, 500. Well, is 500 a lot? I mean, we have 1,000 customers and 500 are calling for problems, yeah, that's a big deal. If it's 500 out of 500 million, maybe it's not that big a deal. And how does it compare to what we used to have? So you need context. So this is getting actually to this actual need. And so when you write a situation statement, one of the key things is because sometimes I've seen situation statements like, well, the customers are kind of unhappy or they're complaining a lot or employee morale is going down. I mean, it's just, or, it just doesn't give you enough data. Well, they're not going to support this application, the software anymore, so maybe we should do something about it. That just doesn't really tell me anything. Doesn't tell me how big it is, do I need to re-up it? Do I need to get a different software? Could be lots of reasons why our customers are unhappy. So a good situation statement expands our thinking rather than solving it. So your situation statement should have no solution. That's later. So what we're doing is figuring out what the problem is first, and then, as much as we all love solutioning, so do our stakeholders. We're kind of waiting on that. So first of all, we got to figure out how big this is. Is it a breadbasket? Is it an elephant? Is it, whatever? So it captures the pain and the current limitations. So in a good situation statement saying, oh, our customers aren't happy, and now if we do this, they'll be happy. Well, how in the heck am I even going to know whether they're happy or not? So we want the facts. If any of you have watched or remember the old Dragnet movie or the Dragnet show, I think it was Sergeant Friday always said, just the facts, ma'am, just the facts. I don't care that, the neighbor's cat, pooped on your front step, but I want to know the facts of, what we're looking at. So the facts should be neutral and indisputable. Indisputable. That means everybody looks at it going, yeah, yeah, that's it. You got it. They're objective. It's not just my anecdotal evidence. It's just not my feeling. It's not, just like, well, I kind of think. No, it's facts. They should be neutral, indisputable. Who's affected? What group of stakeholders are affected? Are they all affected? Is the whole company affected? Is all our customers affected? Or just a smaller group? So we're looking at quantifying this information. Impact, what's the impact of the situation? So what? We got 10 customers complaining. Okay, so what are we going to do about it? Is it important? I don't know, because I don't know how big it is. Like I said, if it's 10 out of 10 million, yeah, maybe. Or if it's your 10 top customers that give you the most revenue. Important. So you have to consider context. You have to capture that. how large of an impact, how big, how severe. Oh, it's going to put a lot of companies out of business. Oh, our customers out of business because they can't get the parts or whatever it is. So being able to quantify as much as you can on what that looks like. So here's kind of a statement. It doesn't have to be big. I like bullet points. I'm a bullet point person. Looks better on a PowerPoint too. So this is just an example. Loan application and speedy mortgage require an average of 45 days to process. Industry standard is 30 days. It's like, okay, well, if I left it there, I would just say, okay, well, 30 days for it's only 15 days more. Come on, people can take a little bit more time to deal with it. No, but so what does that mean? That means for us, delayed application approvals. Okay, so it takes time to approve them. Final closing cost. So that's $200 more per loan. People are not going to be happy about that. Loan abandonment rate of 5%. Ouch. We're losing $10,000 per loan. Might need to think about it. Totaling, oh, what? Excuse me? $1.2 million per year? I think we need to fix this. So you want, when you're making your point, when you're making your case, and no pun intended, have the data to support it. Not just even just 45 days to 30. Okay, but what does that mean to me? What is the bottom line? How much am I going to lose? Or how much, if it's an opportunity, how much am I going to be able to make? So in this case, it's been reported that a patient intake process at emergency room at regional hospital has experienced increased waiting time over the past 2 years. Okay, I know. We just have issues. We can't be as fast as we want. So each patient waits so what does that mean? I might just say, well, they got 5 more minutes. Okay, big deal. Each patient waits for an average of 2.5 compared to less than an hour. And the situation has created 25% increase in trauma escalations. And you don't want that. So, and to think about, what is the data that people care about? So you need to have a really good statement. What's the problem? What's the opportunity? How big is this? Quantify it as much as you can. And then you have to analyze. And you might be updating your situation statement because this might inform you a little bit more as you dig down into the analysis. So you got to make sure you're solving the right problem. So if I went to a doctor and I said, hey, doc, my leg's really bothering me. I got a lot of pain in it. And they go, oh, okay. Here, take an aspirin. If it doesn't go away in a week, come back. Well, maybe I broke my leg. That's not going to help my broken leg. So getting down to the root cause of it. And there's lots of ways to do that. And we actually have a upcoming root cause class if you're interested. So there's a lot of techniques. I mean, you can just look on the web. There's tons of techniques, but we're going to give you a few here. The 5 whys, asking why 5 times. Supposedly the premise is if I ask you enough times, you're going to dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But it only works if I know what the root cause is, because if I don't, I'll never get that deep. There's the Pareto chart, which is really nice. So if you have anything like help desk calls, customer service calls, anything that you have numbers on, and then you can just say, okay, customer complaints, January through March, what were they complaining about? And then you group them, and then you determine, the frequency. So you group them biggest to lowest, I guess you would say. So whatever, D is, whatever issue D is, we had 30 people calling, issue B was 25, etc. And then you just note that it's the Pareto chart, Pareto principle, which is 80-20. So oftentimes 20% of the issues create 80% of the problems. So you're trying to say, okay, and it kind of makes just common sense, is okay, let's look at these 3 because they're the biggest. If we solve these, maybe even some of these will go away. So we're not going to focus our view on the trivial many, these little ones. We're going to focus on where it needs to be focused. So that's how the Pareto chart helps. Fishbone diagram, or also known as Ishikawa diagram, is you put your problem here and then you brainstorm. This is just a way to capture brainstorm ideas. What about materials is causing reports late? What about machines? What about methods? What about people? And these categories can change, but it makes you at least think about the category, because otherwise when we think about, well, what could be causing root cause, we kind of get it blinders in and we go where we think it's going. And the nice thing about the fishbone diagram is it forces you to look at different categories. It's like, what about materials? Oh, we have insufficient paper. Well, how come we have insufficient paper? Well, we kind of have shortage of staff and we don't get our paper on time or whatever. I mean, so, and then you can use the 5 whys too. Why do we have insufficient paper? Or shortage of data entry staff. Why do we have shortage of data entry staff? Low wages and scheduling. What? And then I could go, why do we have low wages? Well, HR has, realigned our pay levels for a long time, or whatever it is. So you can keep digging down, and then you circle the ones that you think, wow, yeah, it could be. So you see the shortage of staff here. Oh, and that's a shortage of staff there, and maybe untrained. So it gets you kind of a closer eye to root cause. You can do process analysis, make a really quick process map and say, where are those problems? Where in the process and what's going on? And then again, you circle the ones that are more likely to be the root cause. So receiving application, oh, it's the rival. Application is mailed. Ooh, that's snail mail. Application gets lost in the mail. That's not very good either. Um, Verify borrower credit. One person does all the verifying. Well, maybe we need to get another person on there, depending on how many loans we have. But so you're looking at the processes and still trying to find issues. And then if you get a number of issues, it's like, wow, we got 4 or 5 issues here. Which one is really the root cause? You can do an interrelationship diagram. I'm not going to take you through it. It'll take me longer to describe than finishing the slides, but it's where you're really focused on, okay, there's one that impacts the other. So shortage of staff impacts not enough paper, extract delays, and scheduling. Low wages might impact shortage of staff. So I mean, you kind of show the arrow where the impact is, and then you figure out, okay, what is really our key thing? Oh, shortage of staff. So maybe we fix that. Some of the others will be fixed. So those are, and this is just the tip of the iceberg. There are tons of root cause analysis, and you just have to use them appropriately. Each show a different view and get you some different information. So then once you have the analysis, say, aha, Susan does have a broken leg. How are we going to fix that? So solution options should directly address, one, the need. What is the problem we're solving? What is the opportunity we try and take advantage of? How are these options going to fix that problem? How are these options going to take advantage of that opportunity? And then they also not only should be directly meet the business needs, but also it should be in response to your root cause analysis work. So they all should have alignment there. So you want to provide, as you create solution options, remember, not just one, but many options. It doesn't mean you need, 20, but you should have more than one. So provide information on why each alternative was selected. So you're going to say, okay, we have option A, B, C, or D. I'm going to recommend C, but this is why A and B and D were not considered, not selected. Okay, so you're comparing them to one another. When you create your solutions, always do you can either say do nothing or keep status quo. It's always an option, but it is a cost. There's a cost to keeping the same thing that you're doing, and there is a big risk. Kind of the definition of insanity. So then we have ensuring all perspectives. As you're getting this, again, pick people's brains, see what they think. What are all the ideas out there? test them out, saying, "Gee, do you think this will even work?" Because I've come with business kids go, "Oh, Susan, I don't know. That is, I'm just gonna tell you, that is never gonna work in this organization." Okay, what would work? What do you think? And then they would start brainstorming with me, and then it's like, okay. So if you know something's not going to work or somebody's never going to buy into it, you either check to see if they will buy into it, or if it's not going to work, get another solution. And then you analyze them. So we have option A, B, C, or D, and based on what the problems were that we thought was root cause, application processes slow and irritating, entrenched, inefficient processes, silo functions. And then you compare. It's like, okay, how does option A, status quo, help that? What about option B? What about option C, option D? So then you can kind of figure out what option makes the most sense and helps and supports and fixes the problem or takes advantage of the opportunity. And then for the recommended one, you might go further into the cost, implementation cost, purchasing cost, and the one that's always forgotten, support cost. Because it's just not putting it in, it's just not the cost of implementing it. Oftentimes we forget support cost, which can be huge and can make a difference on which one you're going to recommend. Because if one software takes just a little bit of support and maybe internal people can do that, and our next one is huge and you have to mostly have a vendor support it, that might make a really big difference on which one you recommend. High level approach, then you determine the implementation approach. So, and again, this is high level, it's not the project plan. So, select, build and buy, or combination. It's like, are we going to build it ourselves? And it's interesting. I've been in this doing this work for over longer than I care to say. But you see it ebbs and flows. I've seen organizations that started out going, "Oh, we're buying everything," and then they go, "No, we're going to build now." And then they go back to buy, "We're going to buy." So it kind of depends on who's on the helm, but or combination, which combinations always a little dicey because if you change it or customize it too much, the next upgrade is going to be horrendous. Determine the resources needed. How many resources do we need? Do we need outsourced resources or just internal resources? Key milestones and maybe phases. Even if you're doing an agile project, maybe how many iterations you're going to do. Uh, Certainly identify the stakeholders and the departments that are impacted, who's all impacted, which departments, which customers, which groups of customers. What is the budget for the recommended option? And then this is another one that I don't find as often, and I would like to. So I'm going to charge you all with putting this in your in your case study or your business case. Um, Defining the organizational change management strategy. How are we going to, it's one thing to implement something. How are we going to bring people along with the change? Because you just change their world when you put in a new project. I mean, that's what I've done most of my life is change people's worlds. And sometimes they're happy about it and sometimes they're not. So what do you do? What is your thoughts about org change? Because if you don't get people to change their work as usual, if you don't get them to change their hearts and minds and do work differently, the project is going to not get the value you thought you were going to get. It'll be huge. So make sure you have kind of a thought process on how are you going to manage. And you don't always need a change manager, but you do need to consider it as you are implementing a project. Then we also want to define evaluation criteria. What does success look like? How do we know if we got success? How do we know we got the value thought we are going to get? Each project should be done because we're going to get value. Now, what is value? Increased revenue, decreased cost, increased profits, increased customers. Maybe we have better customer satisfaction, increased customer satisfaction, but we have to put a measure around that. And so here, increased market share. Increase productivity, the cost saved. So it could be cost saved, cost avoided, cost added. It's usually around cost. Somehow we have to put a cost price tag if we're going to, especially return on investment, right? You got to kind of have a cost to measure. So how are you going to measure that? And you have to make sure it's measurable. It's like, oh, well, we're going to save money. Okay. How much money? How do you know if you did save it? You got to have measurements around that. You got to have a baseline to measure from. So you might say, well, we're going to increase market share. We potentially view that we're going to increase market share by 20% by end of 2025. Okay, that's great. So the end of 2025, you can tell me I can measure this, see if we got market share, but I have to have a baseline. What am I measuring from? Am I measuring June to December? Am I measuring from the last 3 years? What am I measuring from? So you have to be really clear on what you're measuring so that you can measure it. And that's something else we don't do very well is once we implement, it's like, okay, implemented, see you guys later, I'm on to the next project. There should be a plan on how to measure that at that December date. Otherwise, we don't know if we ever got the value. So we determine, and this is a bit kind of the items out of a value plan, because I add the value plan right into the business case, like it, because this is a place where we don't do well. We just say, oh, well, we anticipate increasing revenue. Oh, we anticipate cost savings. How do I know when I see it? I won't, because it's not measurable. So I created this plan and saying, I'm going to give you a little bit more detail. Who's the owner of this first? Somebody has to be measuring. What are the benefits that we see? What's the time frame? Benefits don't always come at once. Value doesn't come at one shot. Sometimes you get a little bit here, a little bit here. Think about productivity. When you first implement something, productivity goes what? Down, because people are learning. So, so what is that? I don't want to measure right away because it's going to look like, oh my gosh, why did we even do this project? It's worse. It's worse. Well, it's worse because people have to learn. And so, what does that look like? So I might get a little after 6 months because they're getting more comfortable, 9 months, a little bit more. I might get a little bit more value at the end of the year and they can do it kind of in their sleep now. They're just rolling. So what is that? What's that time frame? And again, it doesn't have to be a one point in time. It could be multiple points in time. What's the measure? What are we measuring? What's the target measure? What do we hope to get? What is that productivity measure? If I'm measuring productivity, I'm going to also have to have a baseline on which to measure it from so I know whether it changed or not. Where's the data? Sample size. If I'm doing loans, do I check every loan to see if we did it in 25 days instead of 45 days or whatever it was? Or do I just nab every 5 ones? What is the sample size? What's the frequency? How frequent am I going to measure? Who do I report to? How am I going to report it? And who's assigned to take those measures to make sure we get the value? There might be some KPI alignment here. There may or may not. That might be iffy. You might also have a benefits realization roadmap. When do we anticipate those benefits? And it's like, okay, this quarter we anticipate this quarter we anticipate that. And certainly look at any tools you need to bring in to measure that. So that's that value plan. So getting to the top pitfalls to avoid: owning the solution in the decision. There is a little bit power of creating the business case, but you do not get to own the decision. Sorry to say, somebody else owns it, and you all know that. So I'm preaching to the choir here, but just to remember that you don't get to decide, but got a lot of influence when you write the business case. The other thing, not aligning the business case to org strategy. If people can't see the connection, you've just lost them. It's got to be helping the organization go in the direction it's going. Presenting only one solution, no alternatives. There's always alternatives. Always options. And maybe some of them aren't as desirable as others, but there's always options. And do nothing is one, so then your next solution is at least two. So there you go. I already talked about that one. Failure to get buy-in. Like I said, I talk to people all the time early, especially the decision makers. Hey, can I pass something by you? Hey, you got a few minutes? Just want to see if, does this make sense or am I totally off whack? And they usually tell me, and like I said, by the time I present my business case, they're always approved because I've already got their approval and their buy-in because I've talked to them earlier. Omitting cost just benefit justification, you got to do that. And oftentimes I do it with all the alternatives just so that they can see a comparison. And don't forget when you're doing costs to include support costs as well, which I got ahead of myself again. Assumptions, those things we assume to be true because we make assumptions when you do a business case, when you do requirements, whatever, you make assumptions. It's like, I think this is true. I think our customers are going to buy it. It indicated that they were. Now, sometimes your assumptions are wrong, just like when they tried to create that new Coke a number of years ago. They assumed that because they did all these taste tests that, oh, everybody loved the new Coke versus the original Coke. But when they got it out into market, everybody hated it because it didn't taste like Coke. Any constraints? Maybe we have budget constraints, time constraints, resource constraints, the normal business constraints. Maybe there's some HR policies we got to consider, regulations we got to consider, we have to add those. Risk should be there. And for each option, what are the risks of do nothing? There's a big risk there. Risk for option A, B, C, D, making sure that you capture that and not addressing organizational change. And I already talked about that earlier. So now that we're done, sorry, you'll be sorry you don't use that. We'll plan. Um, and we talked about the business case using the approach and common pitfalls. And now, just a little bit, just to note, we have some good classes coming up. Our next business case class is February 14th. Strategic business analysis, in which we talk about a lot of analysis of current state and future state, is the 3rd and 4th. Eliciting requirements, because you have to elicit requirements too when you do a business case, December 4th. And coming brand new off the shelf in 2025, we'll have a root cause analysis class. So with that said, oh, I have 21 messages and I have not been looking at my messages. So Mariella, take it away. What do I need to answer? Oh, what is the do nothing? I did see that one. What is the do nothing option? Means you don't have to make any change. You can keep on going like you have been, but there's a cost and a risk to that. Oh,
Excellent.
and in the sample business case, I can send it to Mariella and she can send it out because we do have a sample business case.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, absolutely. We can definitely look into that for
So
sure.
sorry, I'm answering some of them for you. So go ahead.
No, you're great. Thank you so much. You're awesome for already getting them out. We have a good couple of questions though. One we got a while back. My org has a preference for white papers or options analysis as opposed to business cases. Are they putting the cart before the horse?
Did they tell you? I always ask why. It's a good question. Options analysis is certainly good, but you're solutioning before you understand the problem, in my view. So solutioning or looking at the drivers for the opportunities. Because it's fun to solution because we feel like we're getting somewhere. I love to let's see how we can fix that. What are our options? Which is really great. You need to do that, but you really need to figure out what you're trying to accomplish first.
Absolutely. I think that's a really good insight for sure. And if you have any like any elaboration on that, please definitely drop it in the chat. We did have one more question about the 80/20 rule. I had here, is it the quasi same framework to the DMAIC of Lean Six Sigma?
Well, DMAIC is another way to work through the problem, which is in Six Sigma. So what was the part before the DMAIC?
I think they were talking about the 80/20 or the Pareto
Oh,
chart or the 80.
The Pareto principle.
Yes.
Well, Alfred Pareto was way back in Italy. A little theory about that. And he was looking at the principle and how much it happened in the environment, and he was looking at peas, believe it or not. And he said, well, 80% of the peas are created by 20% of plants, right? Or some such thing. And so then he said, well, where else does that principle apply? Is that like a principle that's common, or is that just a anomaly? And so he was looking for patterns. And then somehow, and I forget how, we started taking it into business, saying, if 20% of our customers give us 80% of our revenue, or 20% of the problems um, create the 80% of the havoc, or so they started using the 80/20 rule. And the Pareto chart is basically creates, it's like, okay, let's go from let's focus on the vital few, that 20. And then if we fix this, a lot of times you fix the key major pieces, a lot of times the rest will follow through and be fixed, or at least minimized.
Excellent explanation. I love that. Absolutely. And we had, I believe, one more question here. What is the difference between risk raised throughout the business case and those raised throughout the project charter?
Well, you certainly can put some of the risk into your project charter from the business case, because the business case usually is your source document for the project charter. And it's going to be the risk as you know them at the time you wrote the business case. By the time you write your project charter, it may have, some of the risks may have changed. Some of them, obviously you could create a risk plan and then just figure out how to mitigate those risks. But um, risk should be constantly monitored anyway. And so by the time I put the risk in for the business case, they could have changed with the project charter. They could change during the project, at any point in time. So you just kind of have to keep an eye on those. But I start with the same. I start with the same and then just analyze them when I'm doing the project charter and saying, okay, this risk isn't anymore. This risk we kind of, or that I got to really manage that risk, or, whether it's mitigate or transfer, whatever else I need to do with that risk. So I'll have to manage it during the project.
It's risky business out here, y'all. That's what this
Ooh.
is. Awesome. Well, I think that was our last question. Oh, just kidding. One more came in. I think we have just enough time to answer it. What would be your suggestion to help stakeholders to own change management?
Well, I would start with the project team and seeing who on the project team can help stakeholders with that, and then encourage them, create an atmosphere, create an environment in which the people that are impacted, often if you get them involved in org change management, the people side of change, then you get their buy-in, and they will help you get the buy-in of others. You find those key people who are interested in either org change management or doing a little bit of, having a part to play in the new situation. So I would say just, start with your project team, even if you don't have a formal OCM, org change manager, and then see if it's like, okay, what are the things we need to do? How do we need to help people go through this change? Who can help us? And asking some of the stakeholders to, hey, what can you do? We have a really great agile change agent, which is around incorporating and getting stakeholders involved in change management, so that it's not you doing it all. It's everybody is helping everybody else through change, which is much more efficient and puts less burden on people too. So
Awesome. Yeah, it's definitely needed direction when there's a lot of change involved. Excellent. Well, I believe, just to be mindful of everyone's time, I think that will be our last question. So thank you so much to our audience for throwing in some great questions. I saw a couple of comments really quickly about asking about the recording. You will definitely be receiving that recording in an email after the webinar. So if you weren't able to attend the entire session, you will definitely be getting that recording. So again, thanks so much everyone for joining us today. And thank you so much, Dr. Heidorn.
you're welcome. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Take care.
Absolutely. Thanks so much for joining us. We'll see you all very soon, hopefully in the classroom. Bye, everyone.
Yes. Bye bye.